Boruto villains are shallow. Boruto Naruto Next Generations is a sequel to the great Naruto and Naruto Shippuden series, and it's not an exaggeration when I say that this series had amazing components which made the entirety of the story more than worth watching or reading, I guess. From intriguing and mysterious characters to twisted but understood motivations to amazing fight scenes and display of power techniques and fighting styles, Naruto had it all. Almost. Happiness, sadness, depression, betrayal, corruption, destruction, a cathartic charm, and a will to never give up. All these emotions stirred into us by the characters of the Naruto franchise. And even though the protagonists of this series did a great job in expressing these feelings and making us fall in love with the series, we all know the villains did a way better job in that aspect. You see, Naruto had a plethora of complicated villains. Pure evil, falling heroes, broken individuals, and ninjas driven by twisted morals to achieve a greater good. Examples of these are seen in the bizarre relationship between Haku and Zabuza, the mind-addled Jinchuriki of the Sand, Gaara, the obsessive ambitions of Orochimaru, Sasuke's desire for revenge, and almost every member of the Akatsuki trying to build a new shinobi world due to the regrets of the past, and some for selfish desires. Nagato, Obito, Madara, all of them trying to run away from the past by creating a new future. Naruto was lit. And seeing how their stories unfolded and how they interacted with the world and the people they once loved really showed some of the emotions we've never experienced. And now with Boruto being a sequel of Naruto and just fundamentally being a shonen manga, there will inevitably be antagonists no matter how peaceful of an era it is. Antagonists made to test the fate of the main cast. Villains to teach the main character a lesson and challenge his morals and worldview. To break and remake an innocent MC lacking in real-world experience and perspective into someone who will bring about great change or great destruction in the future to come. And that's why it disappoints me to see the narrow view and shallow nature of most villains in Boruto. That's just the reality. Not gonna lie, the villains in Boruto almost have no relevant reason as to why they do what they do or what they want to achieve. It kinda really feels like an ass pull. Like I said before, Boruto villains are shallow. Now this doesn't mean that every villain needs a tragic backstory or an intriguing goal. That's not the problem. If the characters are going to be evil, they need to be made in a way that we can feel that. And I say this especially because the antagonists in Boruto were already decided to be different from the antagonists in Naruto. They switched from morally grey fallen ninjas to pure evil. It was said by Ikemoto and Kishimoto themselves that the Boruto villains are going to be of pure evil intent, or like the case of the characters in Naruto. So what went wrong? I mean, yes, these characters are evil, but the first step to make a villain is that you make them evil. Sometimes being evil just isn't enough, but sometimes it's all what they need. It's just that their evil needs to be portrayed more seriously in the series. Make their evil their superpower. Now, besides all I have said, making a villain based off of pure evil is extremely difficult. One mistake and they don't give up that vibe, and that's why I believe every villain in Boruto doesn't need to be based off of pure evil. And this is especially true in consideration to the last main villain of the recent series, Code. Now honestly, this video was originally supposed to be about all members of Kara and how they would have been a better challenge for Boruto and the rest of the cast of the series. But considering how that would have been a tedious video to make and a long video for you guys to watch, maybe I'll just address just Code in this video. Maybe I'll do the rest in another. Probably not, because the stories are kinda not straightforwardly bad as Code is. Anyway, back to the video. Now, in my opinion, Code's character should have been written in the same vein as Kawaki. Considering the circumstances, they had the chance to add every factor of Kawaki's troubled past into Code's, a broken home with a broken parent and a corrupt environment, a consequence of the fourth shinobi war. But here's a twist: instead of being adamant and truthfully scared of Jigen, he would be the exact opposite. Let's dive deeper into this scenario. Now, Code from his introduction came from a group of villains with an unbelievably difficult but expected goal, and mundane characters, Kara. The entirety of Kara doesn't have anything interesting about them aside from their traits and characteristics. And mostly, they didn't need to, at least not for most of the series. Delta has lore, Boron never really had lore in the manga. Koji is an incarnate and Code is, well, just Code, and that's why he was a major problem in the villains department. Regardless of whether or not the law of every other villain is relevant when it comes to their goal, Code just doesn't have a place in Kara. His actions were unexplainable, and just saying that he's a devout Otsutsuki worshipper is just plain. It's not enough to put him on anybody's watch list. But the thing with Code's action and character is that there is a gap between who he was, who he is, and why he does stuff how he does stuff. Now the question that fills that gap is, who was Code before he was abducted by Jigen? Why is he different from Kawaki even though they were both used by Jigen? Used by Jigen? Did Code ever think of himself as a victim or a survivor? Did Code ever think about things like that at all anyways? If we take that into account, building Code as an opposite of Kawaki becomes easy. We know Code as a child was taken in probably in the same vein as Kawaki, but what makes Code see Jigen as a god in contrast to Kawaki seeing him as the devil himself? Let's start from the beginning. By the way, this might as well be a what if video, not real yet. Maybe, who knows. Code, most likely having a different name, is born into a poor, broken home. Multiple families or members, just a father, just like Kawaki. And just like Kawaki, he somehow adores his family members and thinks nothing bad of them. Always trying to shine for their sake, doing everything he can to see them smile as a result of his actions. But also just like Kawaki, those actions were not met with appreciation. Rather, they were met with complete unappreciation, which ultimately in Kawaki's case just led him to do whatever his father told him to do, which reduces his self-esteem beyond recognition of a normal humans. But that's where things start to change in comparison with Code, because even if he's still losing himself trying to impress his family, he slowly develops disdain for them. And that's not just because of how his family treats him, it's because in comparison to another family on how they treated him was vastly different. This part of his character is a crucial pull at the end of the story, so keep this in mind. You see, this family was drastically different from Code's family. They were rich, relatively powerful people in their hometown, basically noble or royalty if you ask anybody, but they were traveling, and by some random chance as they were passing through Code's hometown, they had a problem with transport, so they were stuck there for a while. You see, at this time, anyone with some type of power is looked at with scorn eyes, and by the village's standards, it was like they were fairies in a broken land. They were strangers to these people, but with the addition of being rich and powerful, these people, mostly the adults of the village, looked at the rich people like monsters, heartless individuals who could take with no consideration for others. And it was the same with Code's family, even going as far as saying that people like them are the reason why they are in their current situation of poverty. Seeing this, Code had misgivings, racking his brain as to why strangers would think or go as far as saying these things to other strangers. His distaste towards his family grew even more. But surprisingly, the rich family was used to this, being treated by the less privileged as queens and kings, but talking down on them behind their backs. Brutal, but they were used to it. A few hours or days into their unwelcome visit, one incident led to another, and Code has stumbled upon an opportunity to talk to a member of this rich family, a dying daughter, suffering from an illness that couldn't be cured, and that was actually their reason for traveling. Code thought to himself that considering the words of his people and even how his own family treats these strangers, that they would treat him in that manner as a form of retaliation. But to Code's surprise, she was nice too. He had thoughts like she probably sees me as a helpless kid or she's just trying to pretend. But after getting to know her, she was genuine. In Code's eyes, she was the exact opposite of what his villagers have been saying about them, and especially an exact contrast to his family. His distaste grew even more. He spent more time with this contrast of a character for a while. A few days in fact. Sadly, due to her illness becoming even more serious, she sadly passed away. Now, she was predicted to die a few weeks later, but the illness caught up to her too fast, and especially the fact that she's in an unknown territory, more problems acclimated due to this illness. Code on that day lost a friend, someone who actually appreciated him for who he was, but his family didn't care, of course. But he disregarded that, and as a token of his respect for his friend, he made a gravestone to remember her, the only person he tasted kindness and appreciation from. One day, he came to pay respect to his friend at the grave, and to his surprise, a group of individuals, mostly kids of his own age, destroyed the grave, right in front of Code. This filled him with a lot of rage. Now, before this, he already had disdain towards this group of people. They were typical bullies in the village, mostly for kids his age. So for them to destroy something he treasured without provocation caused him to hate enough to plot revenge. He waited a few days. As one of the kids also went into the woods to gather materials, Code killed him, smashed his head into a rock, and after realizing what he did, he was definitely a little shocked at himself for holding a grudge long enough to kill someone. And he slightly regretted his decision, but a little part of him was happy about what he did. Just a little. A few days passed and the kid Code killed went missing. Try to say that. Kid Code killed. Damn. A few days passed and the kid that Code had killed was pronounced missing. Code, as usual, still wants out to prove something to his family, disregarding the fact that the kid that he killed has been pronounced missing. Now, even though he had slight disdain for them, they were, to him, undoubtedly his object of obsession, still hoping to achieve something worthy of some attention from them at least. But little did he know that his family knew that Code killed this kid, but didn't bother to bring it up until the family of the deceased offered a cash prize to get the killer and the body location. Now, in order to corner Code, they sadistically made him believe that one of his actions to gain attention actually worked, giving him praise for bringing hope to the family. In the mind of Code, this was the best moment of his life. Everything he did was for this moment. Starving, working, losing himself, but it paid off. But to Code's surprise, multiple people from his village surrounded him, carrying weapons and farming tools. He was confused as to why this was happening, and before they completely circled him, he saw his mother receiving the payment for the bounty of the dead kid. And that's when Code realized why his mother and his family was being kind to him. Code's heart and mind was broken. All he was to his family was a pawn to be used in a convenient opportunity. His mother had no expression in her face as the villagers slowly cornered her son even more. And as soon as the weapon was about to crack Code's skull open, his mother shouted, "Stop!" The weapon stopped right on Code's head. Not enough for a critical hit, but just enough to give him a scar that ran from his frontal lobe to the middle of his forehead. And as his mother approaches him, she shows him a few coins in a bag and tells him, "This is all you were worth to me." And then she left. Code's world turned upside down with those words in his mind and heart, as the last words he heard from the mother he adored way too much. His disdain for his family, mother, and the people he grew up with in the village grew beyond bound, but there was nothing he could do. This was Code's last moment on earth. This was where the life of a 60-year-old praise-obsessed child would die. And as everybody raised their weapon to kill Code, a shadowy figure appeared right in front of Code. Everyone else was in shock, realizing that this figure appeared out of nowhere so fast. But as soon as one of these villagers was about to attack the stranger, this shadowy figure straight up obliterates him. Like Kaguya style obliterates. Nothing left. Everyone was shocked at how quick this stranger took as one of their own. This caused panic throughout the village, making everyone run around scared. Seeing this, the stranger used this chaos to his advantage to annihilate every single villager in the area. Code watched as this stranger destroyed what he called home. Well, what he used to call home. She and the rest of his family was killed like the rest of the villagers. Nothing special to Code. After seeing that, he realized his mother was nothing special. It was all over. The stranger killed everyone Code knew. Only him left. You'd expect him to be terrified, but Code had too much disdain in him to care. Too much disdain, in fact. But what was crazier is that in a pool of blood made from his own mother's cadaver, he dipped his hand in it and rubbed it in his face, still asking as always, "Is this good enough, Mom? Was I of help this time?" Truly embracing his mindsets as that of a psychopath, a product of his environment. He considered this stranger a savior. The stranger, seeing this, is also unfazed. He approaches Code and says to him, "From now on, you are my son." And that's how Code's story with the stranger started, and how the story with his poor village and his family ended. As they approach the stranger's base of operation, a white-bearded man says, "Chigen, you're back. Is this the last kid?" And then the stranger, who we know as Chigen now, says, "This isn't the last kid. There's one more I need to get. I'll be back." He then tells Code that he should wander around for a little while until Amado is ready, and that soon enough, he would have to prove that he is worthy of being Jigen's son. Code was unhingedly joyed at this. Even Amado was a little ticked by his encounter with a kid who felt nothing but pleasure after the death of his people, but this wasn't his domain, so he let it go. So after Code had a tour of the base, Amado made him unconscious and put him in a big body bag ready for the ritual, or according to Code himself, the ritual that would make his father acknowledge him. A few hours pass, Code has a short seizure, and then he wakes up shortly after finding out that there was a weird white diamond shape in his arm. Stevie Universe. He thought he had survived and had claimed his position as Jigen's son, his favorite, but to his surprise, all of his happiness was snatched away from him once again as he found out that he was another child who had gained the real gift of Jigen. And just like that, Code's desire's position was snatched away from him once again. He was jealous of this kid, but when he realized that this kid did not want the blessings of Jigen, it made Code even more furious towards who we know as Kawaki. Over time, during every possible encounter with Kawaki, Code tortures him, tormenting him out of jealousy of taking his position. But this Code didn't give up. He trained and acquired more abilities to be of use to his master, and one day he attained the Shinjutsu etched into the body of a dead Otsutsuki, his claw marks. This makes him an irreplaceable member of Kara, but it doesn't feel his desire to be chosen as Jigen's vessel. Now, this version of Code is a little stoic in nature, and is definitely aggressive every time he sees Kawaki regardless of the situation. He's just aesthetically cooler, and frankly his design wouldn't change almost at all, because his design here is still based off of the fact that he's casting off the poverty-filled life he struggled unconsciously, telling himself that he is nothing like the people he grew up with. And as for the end of Code's story, it will be based off of the current occurrences. His master gets killed by the one who he tortured for so long. He swears revenge on him, but he has failed attempts along the way. And in the time skip, as an attempt to get revenge, he battles for so long with Kawaki that he starts to get a little emotional about how Kawaki should have just appreciated his position as Ishiki's vessel, being aggressive and constantly trying to bash Kawaki over it at the top of his lungs. But Kawaki makes a statement that makes Code realize something. You can't talk for me because you were never the vessel. Basically, Kawaki explains in Code detail why being the vessel of Ishiki was hell for him, and Code would never understand his pain, so everything he was doing up until now was flawed. Kawaki exposes his past to Code, and Code realizes that they had very similar pasts, except Kawaki never experienced the friendship he shared with that rich girl. He tries to ignore this as he was still insistent that Jigen would never be whatever Kawaki explained him as. But Code was a sociopath. He already lost by trying to ignore the truth, and because of that, there was a weak point in all of his attacks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Code fell. Ruthlessly being killed by the one who he considers a traitor, and the person responsible for stealing his place, and also realizing that he never really understood what it meant to be the vessel, and why Kawaki is who Kawaki is today. And mind you, when I say brutal, yeah, he got his head cut off type shit. Moral of the story: don't mess with the 7th Hokage or Kawaki. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to talk too much about the ending part of Code. I wanted to leave that to you guys. Plus, Code is still kind of redeemable in the actual story. This is just a concept for Code's real story. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with him. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment your thoughts on how you wanted Code's story to originate, and even maybe how it ends, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 ASAP, like tonight. Alright, peace out.